Welcome to another episode of the Impossible Life podcast. I'm your co-host Nick Surface, and I'm looking across at a man who has never sent a birthday card in his life. That's right, friends, the former Navy SEAL, Garrett Unkelbach, a man who knows actions speak louder than words.
You know, I will be honest. Birthdays and birthday cards are hard for me.
Yeah, I see. This is part of the sub mini series of Garrett's opinions, which you're very adamant about saying I don't do birthdays. I don't think that birthdays are special. Everyone has one. I'll show you by I love you by my actions all year long. And it's like, well, that's good for you, but there's 7 billion other people who do like birthdays. You know what I mean? So, whatever. You're not a
Celebrate me.
conformist. I
I
get
was
it.
born.
Yeah,
I'll celebrate
it's
you
kind of like
for other reasons.
yeah, like graduating high school because that's rare as well, right? That's right. Anyways, we could go down the whole. Let's talk about things that get celebrated that maybe you should just be expected to do, but we're not going to do that. Today's episode is actually we don't often do a tools and
I
tactics
feel
that's a
like I
follow
feel
up.
like having a birthday party is kind of like a participation trophy. Like, hey everybody, I'm still here.
Yeah, I mean, you know what though, G? One day we're going to be pretty old, and maybe then we'll be like, you know what?
Yeah, that's what I'm
Maybe
saying. If you're like over 90, it's like, you know what? Let's celebrate your birthday. Like you did it. Wow,
so.
another one.
For probably like 99.99% of our audience, they're like, well, I don't qualify for Garrett's birthday card list, which is fine. So, like I'm not sure I qualified either, and I'm one of his best friends. Anyways, it's not often that we do a tools and tactics as a follow up to an episode, but we had the interview that just dropped on Monday with Josh Broome, which we've had amazing feedback about from just people commenting as well as just people we know, and it was such a blessing to be able to share his story. And one of the things that Josh touched on so that we highlighted it in the episode was the need for brotherhood. And because he talked about if you're a guy who's struggling with porn, like you need to confess everything to a brother. And I think he said the level of your confession is like the level of your transformation. And I just realized I was like, brotherhood is such a misunderstood thing because I feel like guys in society will throw it out as like, we were a band of brothers. And it's like a bunch of drinking buddies who played rugby for 3 years. And it's like, we were a band of brothers. We had our brotherhood. And it's like,
Well,
well,
here's what
I don't,
here's what I would say is that I think a lot of people see the military as brotherhood, but if you
right.
knew what it was, you'd know how to recreate it. Because there's so
Yeah.
many people who say, like, man, I just wish we had brotherhood, right? Like, I miss the military. There's other ways to have brotherhood besides being in the military. So if people really knew what it was, they'd be able to recreate it.
Exactly, and that's why we're doing a tools and tactics episode because you have lived out brotherhood at one of the most elite levels as SEALs. I mean, you guys refer to each other as brothers, and mean that. But obviously, you guys retire, you get out of the SEAL team. So then what happens? And I think to your point, that's why it's like if you know what it is, you can recreate it. Well, gee, let's do a very impossible life thing. We're going to dive into what makes brotherhood. But very first thing, what is it not? Because I talked about how a lot of people will throw the term out there. What is brotherhood not?
Yeah, I think where people might get the concept of brotherhood is a friend group, right? Where
Right.
you have like multiple associations. Hey, we all like to do the same things. Um, People talk about fraternity, like fraternities, frats as a brotherhood, and it might start to get close to being a little bit more than a friendship. But when you look at the relationships that are in them, I would say it doesn't qualify. But I think the misconception on brotherhood is that it's just a group of friends.
Right. Yeah, very good. And most friendships, I mean, they're really a matter of proximity, whether it's by to an activity or to a geography. It's like we live in the same place or we both like the same thing. We're going to be friends. And I think over time they just kind of feel like they need to level up their terminology for their friendship. And
I think people also might see brotherhood as just some form of accountability.
right.
I think accountability comes in the brotherhood, and we'll talk about why. But that's not what it is. Brotherhood's not a friend group with accountability. It's more than
Yeah.
that.
Very good. All right. Well, we're going to get into what brotherhood is, but as always, let's go to the word. And this is probably the most famous scripture about brotherhood and about brothers dwelling together in unity. If you know your word, you know I'm talking about Psalms 133, which is a whole three verses. So I'm going to read the whole thing real quick. So it says, "Behold how good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell in unity. It's like the precious oil on the head, running down on the beard of Aaron, running down on the collar of his robes. It's like the dew of Hermon, which falls on the mountains of Zion. For there the Lord has commanded the blessing, life forevermore." And if you know anything about that anointing oil that they're referring to on Aaron, that was a very holy, consecrated, you're set apart, like for my use, was what he was saying when he anointed them. Because that was basically him anointing the priesthood, if you know your Levitical priesthood in the Old Testament. So this is not just kind of like, hey, some anointing oil, that was great. This is like the mark of God setting you apart and consecrating you. So brotherhood is ranked, has a very high regard and the unity that's in it. Is anything you want to add to that, G?
Well, just say, hey, that's why we need brotherhood. For one,
Yeah,
here God calls it good. And, it doesn't say brotherhood here specifically. It says brothers who dwell in unity.
right.
And that's a great definition of brotherhood. It's not brothers who dwell in agreement. It's not brothers who dwell in shared favorite activities. It's not brothers who live close to each other and share a back fence. It's not
Mhm.
brothers who hate the same things, or friends
Right.
who hate the same things. Brothers who dwell in unity. And if you've ever been a part of unity in anything, what you'll know is that to be united with other people, you've had to give up some things that were important to you, right?
Yeah.
Again, it's not brothers who dwell in agreement, it's brothers who dwell in unity. And to have unity is to one, prize unity over your own personal preference, and to prize the other people and the value of being together over your own personal preference. Because if the most important thing to you in your life is yourself and the things
Mhm.
that you want, you will never find unity anywhere.
Yeah, very, very good. Well, we defined it. We defined three things that really characterize brotherhood. G. So like you kind of alluded to them there, but let's just dive into those three things. I mean, the very first thing we said is that it's men committed to each other, right? And that's
Right.
not just like a light word when we say that. I mean, you talked about how you can't be selfish if your most important thing in the world is you. You're going to fall short of ever finding brotherhood. So that's step number one. You got to be committed to each other. But what do like define that a little more?
Yeah, so three requirements of brotherhood. Number one is men committed to each other. And when I was in the SEAL teams, I had a guy who was my fire team buddy, the guy who I guarded my back and he guarded mine. And this was a guy. I won't say his name on the podcast. I do share this story sometimes, and I'm happy to talk about it. But this was a guy who me and him did not get along at all. Outside of work, I wanted to punch him in the face most of the time, and he felt the exact same way about me. Um, we weren't going to be friends. We didn't necessarily enjoy spending time together, but I would very much consider him a brother. And if I had to choose someone to guard my back, I would choose this guy 10 times out of 10.
Hmm.
Why? Because I knew the character that he had and the level of commitment that he had to me. His level of commitment for me was not that he thought my jokes were funny, was not that we enjoyed spending time together. I knew how he felt about me and as a SEAL, right? And I knew how he felt about us as a team or as a brotherhood in that context. So I didn't need him to like me. So commitment is saying commitment similar to covenant in this standpoint of saying, look, it doesn't matter that I like you or that I don't like you. Out of my qualities, out of what I prize and what I honor, I'm gonna do my job with you.
Mm. That's so good. Now you touched on that, so it's kind of logical to move on to the second part because it's like, well, why would you be committed to
Well,
somebody?
and I would say the difference there, like friends and brothers, like friends are with you when things are good, but then the
Mhm,
real test is like when things are difficult. Um, Brothers, I would say, like, there's different levels of brother. And scripture says that there's a friend who sticks closer than a brother. And so, like, not I have people who are a brother to me who I wouldn't say are like my closest relationship.
mhm,
And then I have other people who are friends who maybe they're not in the same brotherhood that I am. They're different types of relationships. But a brother is a man who he's going to show up, like when you need him the most, like when you're in a
mhm.
difficult situation. There are people who are friends, that the people that you like, they care about you, that they want to spend time with you, you enjoy spending time with them, they'll answer your phone calls, but they may not necessarily be committed to you, because
Right.
a commitment is a certain quality that a man has. Like, no matter how inconvenient it is, no matter what it puts me through, I'm going to show up because of the
Mhm.
type of person that I am, not because I like you.
Right. Yeah, very good. And the reason you would commit to a man is because, like we said, the second thing is that it's men committed to the same mission. And you touched on that in the SEAL teams.
Right.
But like
And with
that's
my
why you
fire
would
team
commit to. Yeah.
Yeah, with my fire team buddy, that was part of the reason I knew he was so committed to me is because the level that I knew he was committed to the mission. Now, again, he was not a guy that I necessarily liked, but I would tell you he was a great SEAL. He was
Mm,
very good at his job. He was very respectable. Anybody, he's someone that you would want on your team. And I knew how passionate he was about the mission, how much he cared about the mission. And so, because he had such a level of commitment to that, what this begins to do is we've talked about this before on the podcast is where you have alignment, right? Where there's
mm,
something that's an authority in your relationship. Now, in the SEAL teams, the authority was the mission. In godly brotherhood, that authority is God. Like, hey, I'm like Nick's a brother for me, but I'm not just committed to Nick. Nick knows that I'm committed to the kingdom, and Nick's committed to the
mm.
kingdom. So there's this multi-stranded cord that's pulling us together. It's not just that I think Nick is funny, because if that's what it was all about, we probably wouldn't spend very much time together, right?
That's
We're
unnecessary,
commit
by the way. Yeah, you could have let that one slide.
we're committed. You can go let it slide. We're committed on a much deeper level, other than just our commitment to each other, but also our commitment to this podcast, our commitment
Mhm.
to the missions that God's given us, and ultimately our commitment to the kingdom. And that's
Yeah.
what creates a way deeper level of relationship, because brotherhood gets tested when you go through difficult times. A lot of people have friends that come and go in their life because it's like, oh well, that friend did this, or that friend moved away, or whatever it is. You can have things that change the nature of a friendship, but in a brotherhood it's like, look man, maybe our personal relationship can change, but the brotherhood's bigger than all of us.
Yeah. That's so good, G. And when you have that sort of commitment, it's like, okay, great. So I'm just going to go out and commit to some people and we're going to commit to a mission. There we go. Right. No, that's where the third one is. I think honestly, the third one is where people get broken. The third part is that you have standards for staying in brotherhood or removing brotherhood. And
Great example of this is like a biker gang, right?
right.
Um, biker gangs, they're not necessarily lawful people,
Right.
but there are rules for how you treat other members of the biker gang. There's a great level of commitment for serving the biker gang's purpose
Hmm.
above your own. And then there are things that you can do, and there's things that you can't do. And if you do this, you're out of the biker gang, and all your relationships are cut off with each other, right? And I have friends who have been in biker gangs before, and they talk to me about, like, man, that's one of the things that they missed so
Hmm.
much, right? And being a part of Mighty Men reminded them of that, and in a positive way. Biker
Right.
gangs don't not only less than 1% of biker gangs are lawless biker gangs. By the way,
Right.
just doesn't mean because Mighty Men might be similar to a biker gang that we're out there doing nefarious activity. It's not the
We
reference
do
that I was
jump people in and out though. So, that's just to be said.
jump them in with push-ups.
Yeah. And
But anyways,
you
this
get,
third level of brotherhood is that there's standards, right? And that's where the reason you do that is like, hey, the brotherhood and how the way the brotherhood works, the way it operates, it's more important than my own personal preferences. So we all have to live up to this standard, and anyone in it. That's what makes it special. Is this isn't your workplace? In your
yeah,
workplace, if you might be a part of a workplace where you got people in the C-suite that they're like, oh, I don't have to do that stuff anymore. Hey, you guys
exactly.
got to be
Yep.
in here at 8 o'clock, but I don't have to do that anymore. That's not a brotherhood, but a brotherhood. And again, the SEAL teams operated this way, at least at the SEAL unit level. The SEALs go on to higher ranks and go work really outside of the SEAL teams, and that's a little bit different. But guys who were at a team, everyone's doing the same thing. The CEO came out and PT'd with everybody else, right?
Hmm.
The CEO wasn't like, oh well, I'm not a shooter anymore. I can be fat. No, he did all this. Most at my command, I had two different CEOs, and both of the CEOs were like pro triathlete level athletes. They wanted to get out there on Friday. We would do these things called monster mashes, which was a run, swim, lift. And a lot of the times the CO was like in the top five to finish out of 150 guys. So he wanted
Wow.
everyone to know, like, I'm not beyond this.
Right. And for those of you guys who have seen Mighty Men or you've heard us talk about it, because we talk about it all the time, what Garrett just shared, I think, is really the secret sauce. And I think it's why it's flourished under your leadership because you've seen, I say it all the time, you've seen standards at a level that most people don't know exist, where it's like, Oh, you didn't meet the standard, go away. Oh, but I really want this. Tough. Like, you're not fit for it. Oh, you didn't put your barrel all the way over and you missed it by 6 inches. Go run a mile up a hill and drag a tire. Like, people can't understand that level of adherence to standards. And while we're not like that in Mighty Men, there's grace and mercy in what we do. You hold the standard high for a reason, and you uphold us. You challenge us as leaders, and you to uphold the same standards. So if you're out there and you're going, "Hey, I want to develop brotherhood. I want to develop a Mighty Men," we've basically defined this in three things, but it's commitment and standards. That's really what you've brought in, that you've adhered to so clearly. And to your point you just made about COs, guess who's out there doing every single thing that we're doing? Garrett, right? And I'm a tribe leader, which in the way we do it is, I'm very close to assisting Garrett in this. Guess what? My requirements are the exact same, and actually they're more since when I joined as a year one guy. So it's like as you go up, there's actually more demanded of you, not less. And that's where people fall off, is they get to the point where they're like, hey, when's this going to end? Well, it doesn't. Like, you always have to show up. You always have to turn up. You're committed to the standard. And if you opt out, you're opting out of the whole thing of brotherhood.
It's one of my favorite anecdotes in the book Gates of Fire. Gates of Fire is historical fiction, and so the anecdote that I'm going to share, it's not documented history, it's historical fiction, but it's one of my favorite anecdotes from the book, where the night before the Battle of Thermopylae, so before the Spartans are gonna, they go into the last fight they're ever in with the Persians, the night before the Battle of Thermopylae, Leonidas comes out, and normally it's like the young guys, like the 18, 19-year olds
Hmm.
that have the night watch, and Leonidas comes out and takes the final watch, tells the guys like, "Hey, you guys go to
Hmm.
sleep, get ready for the battle. I'll stay up all night to, as we come into this." And that, I think that's such a great example of really what brotherhood looks like,
Yeah.
is leaders who are willing to literally get in the trenches, do the same things as everybody else, because it's an organization, right? If I'm not saying there aren't other ways to have an organization, but a brotherhood is a type of organization where, hey, we all abide by the same standards. The most important thing to us is the mission, and my level of commitment to you is higher than my level of affection for myself.
Yeah. And what we're saying without saying it, and I don't want everybody to be like, oh, cool, I'll just put a bunch of standards together and we'll commit to them and we'll have a Mighty Men or we'll do this. The underlying purpose is really what all this is built on. Because Mighty Men for us is a discipleship path. Yes, you get a t shirt and all that sort of stuff, but it's like, how do you determine the standards? Well, they're all biblical standards. We have T rated, which is time, talent, treasure, and temple, which means that you're going to be serving, giving of your time and your talent, serving at church. Yet we have attendance requirements for meeting at Mighty Men and some of the other stuff that we do. We do require tithe because that's a biblical thing. And we also look at temple. We now have a test in and a test out at the beginning of the year. And we do all that not because it's like, hey, let's make it hard or wouldn't that be cool? It's 100% because we want to honor God and we want to teach discipleship and how to steward all the areas of your life, which is how we determine what the standards are. And those standards gradually go up. It was one book last year and another and an additional book if you were a leader. This year it's 4 books for every man on the path. So like standards raise as your level of purpose goes up as well.
Yeah, just this isn't necessarily the purpose of this episode, but just to comment on it, is the reason that we do that is I believe discipleship happens through relationship, right? The
Hmm.
same way that we have relationship with God, discipleship happens through relationship. The disciples learn from Jesus, not just from hearing his messages, but more importantly, they learn from Jesus by following him and spending time with him. They had a
Hmm.
lot of, sunrises and sunsets and meals together with Jesus, and that's where they grew. That's where they really learned to be like him. So discipleship happens through relationship, and on an even deeper level, I believe that discipleship grows and transformation grows inside the context of a brotherhood, right? Because it
Hmm.
really teaches many of the characteristics. It's called Mighty Men because it's an example of David's mighty men, the Gabor Hayal, the mighty men of valor, and they were all following David in that story. David's the one who really founded the brotherhood, in the context of mighty men, though, I'm not David. Jesus is our David. We're all following
Hmm.
him.
Yep.
We just get to be mighty men that are following after him. Jesus sets the standard, but even in the same context, at the end of Second Samuel, you had mighty men who were named, who were distinguished. These guys said, like, "Hey, I'm going to help make this thing great," and that's what we get the opportunity to do.
Hmm.
It's a commitment to something that's more important than us. Just like David's mighty men said, like, "Hey, man, God's using David. I'm going to serve him. I'm going to follow him." And that's what we're doing. We're saying, you know what? We're going to follow after Christ with all that we got. And we're going to do it in a certain way. We're going to do it together. And if you want to do it with us, here's what that looks like.
Yeah, so I hope that's helpful for you guys as we've defined it. We've told you what it's not. We've given you a few examples from SEAL teams to biker games to or biker gangs to how it looks in our men's ministry. And like I said, if you want to know more about this and like, okay, yeah, purpose and standards, I see you guys touched on it. We have a purpose. We had the how to build a winning culture episode, which I still think is one of the best ones we've ever done. I'll link to it in the show notes if you want to go deeper on like how do you really build a culture and then have this understanding of brotherhood because you get the question all the time, gee, how do I build a mighty man where I'm at? And you always say start with one man. But like we on this episode, we kind of zoomed out a little bit down the road, like, okay, now we're at 400 plus every week, whatever it may be. That's just a reflection of doing the right things over and over and over again. And how long are we going to do those things? Well, we're just going to keep doing them till we die. And then, by that point, we should raise up our sons and future sons that aren't ours by blood to carry it on. And that's the beautiful thing is like, it's not just it's not dependent on one single man. So yeah, I hope that's helpful for anybody out there. G, anything you want to close with?
No, I would just say that brotherhood is such a special thing for people to be a part of. And women can have relationships like this too. I would take those
Mhm.
same standards that apply, committed to each other, committed to the same mission. And then there's a standard for what it means to be a part of the group. And so for men or for women, obviously, this podcast is very much about helping men on their journey. But for men or for women, I think a brotherhood or that type of group is one of the most special things that you can ever be a part of, right? There are experiences that I think, I've gotten to do some wild stuff in my life, Nick. There are things that I've gotten to do that you either got to have been in the SEAL teams or be a billionaire to get to do. Things like jumping out of airplanes with rocket launchers. There's just some stuff I got to do, but I wouldn't say those are the most special things. I would say things like getting to see your children be born, and I
Mhm.
would say being a part of a great team, being a part of a brotherhood. These are very special experiences that I think are some of the most wonderful things that we can do in life. So if you're not in a group like that, a brotherhood or a sisterhood, if you're not in something like that, get out there and find one. Find some people around you and help get one started.
Also, you should jump out of a plane with the rocket launcher if you can.